But for the person who's just starting out, they can't just like jump in and really be part of the conversation because they're so lost in the sauce already.
And we were not wanting to just dumb stuff down, but just be able to break it down in order to help people grow, help disciple people and bring them up. And we have had, mostly you have been able to disciple some friends and really share with them some deep theological stuff. You've broken it down for them, and then now they're miles down the road in their walk with understanding theology and the Bible and hermeneutics and covenant theology and all this kind of stuff. Calvinism, doctrines of grace, and all these things that you think, oh my gosh, no one will ever, but you just break it down.
Right.
And so that was kind of the inspiration was behind the name of Awakening Reformation was biblical illiteracy was rampant during Luther's time. People didn't have the Bible in their own language. They didn't read it for themselves. All they listened to was the priest give their interpretation, and they had sole authority of what it meant and all this kind of stuff. So biblical literacy was high. And we see a similar thing, except for everyone has like 5 Bibles in their house.
Right. Well, we live in the Bible Belt too, where everyone wants to be a Christian, quote unquote. But when you start talking about doctrine, either people scatter or they like latch on for dear life because they love what you're talking about and they're so interested and they're hungry for it. But unless they like dig their claws into you and don't let go, you're probably going to lose them because honestly, there is nothing. I mean, most things that are taught in the Bible Belt are pretty superficial at the majority of churches. There are really good churches, don't get me wrong. But in the Bible Belt, there's like 50 churches on a, streets on one street.
There's
and
hundreds in a decent-sized city.
Exactly. And most of them are just not biblical churches. So we just saw a need for maybe more of an intermediate type podcast. Where that, like you said, that wasn't being dumbed down. Truths were not being dumbed down. And we just kind of walked through certain doctrines. And honestly, as we were walking through certain doctrines, our theology was changing. God used the podcast to awaken a reformation of our own theology. And it was kind of like God's way of being tricky with us. But it's been really good and it's been fun. And it's caused a lot of robust dialogue between you and I as well.
This is, very true, very true. Same thing in Luther's day where people were reading the Bible for the first time and being excited like, what, that's in there? Or that's what it really says? We were hoping to cover theology and cover certain topics and have people go, oh, that's really in there? Oh, that's what that means? Oh, that? And get people excited about learning their Bible.
Right.
Not just you got your, read the Bible in a year plan? We'll stick to it and read 1,000 chapters a day and just get them excited about it.
The name obviously comes from a combination of the Great Awakening and the Protestant Reformation, both of which were profound in the Christian church. And
all to the ends of glorifying God and enjoying Him forever. That is the end too. This is a means to that end.
Boom. Okay, next question.
You
ready for this one?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This was given to us by a friend who knows us well.
I can't be not ready anyway. Alright, what do you got?
You should be kind of scared.
I am scared because you're smiling. You got that smile on your face.
What is the one
crazy look in your eye?
What is the one thing that this was given to me? What is the one thing that you and Grant are, quote, having robust dialogue over, end quote, as of late? So what are you and I having robust dialogue over lately?
Like
what biblical
topic?
What was the last thing we argued about? It's not arguing. Grant and I don't argue.
No, we don't argue ever.
We have robust
dialogue.
Whence iron sharpens iron.
That leads to oneness.
I was saying friction. You're saying oneness.
I said it leads to it. Okay. There's a lot of friction on the way.
We're robustly dialoguing over our robust dialogue.
Right. Are you thinking about the like biblical counseling versus getting like behavioral health?
No, but that's good. I was thinking when it was like 11:30, we're both laying in bed talking about theonomy. Okay.
The other one, was theonomy. And what role God's law plays in the world today.
So yes, to our listener, it's been theonomy and Christian biblical counsel.
Versus going to like a psychiatrist or medical
like a Christian psychologist even.
Yeah. But you're...
We won't go down that rabbit trail.
Yeah, but...
Anyway,
it's just tricky.
That was a good question.
Yeah, that is good.
Okay.
What you got?
Most Paedo Baptists I know also subscribe to the regulative principle. Do you? And if so, does that hermeneutic hurt the paedo-baptism argument at all, since it is not positively prescribed?
So I think what this person's getting at is that since baptizing your kids, quote unquote, isn't positively prescribed,
meaning explicitly taught.
But I'm gonna get
technical
this listener on that one. Then how could we hold to the regulative principle? So for those who don't know, the regulative principle just means that whatever scripture tells us to do in the worship service, that's all we should do. The other side is normative, which is as long as scripture doesn't forbid it, then it's allowed. So Erica and I hold to a soft regulative principle, which the Two Thieves on their podcast explained very well, that we definitely hold to whatever scripture tells us to do, whatever we can find with good inference and on principle that scripture tells us to do in the worship service, then that's what we do and nothing else. And so without getting too deep into that, I don't know if you want to go any deeper explaining that, but we do hold to it, and it'd be soft regulative principle.
Yeah, very much soft. There are many different camps in the Presbyterian side of things. Some are
there's different shades.
Some are incredibly strict in a regulative principle, and they will not have any instruments in worship.
And only psalms. They're called exclusive psalmody.
They don't hold to the church calendar in any way, shape, or form. We are not that. And then even
they apply it at home.
Yes, that's true too.
Because they say, how would you worship any different at home than at church?
Because we should be worshiping all the time. Yeah, that's what they'll say. So
we're not there. I don't think you can hold that up with scripture. So
yeah, I have a few issues. Regardless, we do hold to a soft regulative principle, like you said. We think if God prescribes a worship service, so to speak, for us, then we ought to hold to it.
What is your ringtone?
It's classical. I'm smart. So
to the point about hurting paedo-baptist argument, I think paedo-baptism is positively prescribed. And is that who called you?
Yeah. Our sister-in-law's trying to call us.
Our bad. To the point that it hurts paedo-baptism argument because it's not positively prescribed, I would say that paedo-baptism is positively prescribed in Scripture because children were given the initiatory sign of the covenant. In Genesis 17, God told Abraham to do that. And by Galatians 3 and Romans 4, we are called children of Abraham.
Right.
Peter, in Acts 2, gave the same structure and formula of God's promises as Genesis 17. They almost exactly mirror each other. This was another huge argument for me. It just came later. But Genesis 17 and Acts 2 almost exactly mirror each other in that the promise is for you, for your children, and for those who are far off. So I think it is positively prescribed. I think in that way, the new covenant is linked to the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis 12, 15, and 17.
Well, this goes into how strict are you going to be on what is prescribed by Scripture. Because some people are okay with it being prescribed from inference. Some people want it to be explicit, like letter of the law, letter of the word, kind of a prescription. Because
I think they don't do church on Thursday. Because we're just told in the New Testament that they had church on the Lord's Day, which was Sunday. But we're not told to do that. We're not commanded to do that positively, are we?
No. It really boils down to how harsh are you on the regulative principle, and then how much do you see a tie between the Abrahamic covenant and the new covenant.
Right.
I guess that would be the question that really has to be answered for the listener first, and then go from there.
All right. So next question?
Yeah, from the same listener.
Same listener. Then we read the whole thing?
Yeah.
This is how it's framed. In the paedo-baptism episode, you talked about the hermeneutic that gets you to that position, namely reading the whole of Scripture and seeing that children are always included in the covenant community. And we talked about Ephesians 6, how they're commanded and that parents are commanded to bring them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord and discipline and instruction of the Lord, which mirrors Deuteronomy. So then he asks, does that same hermeneutic lead you to ascribe to family integrated church and paedo-communion, which would be giving communion to your children?
Right. Like infant children.
Infant children. So for family integrated church, family integrated worship, I'd say 100% that kids are supposed to be included with the whole,
worship service.
The whole worship service. But at the same time, when it comes to Sunday school, we go to our Sunday school class. The kids go to their Sunday school class, which is age appropriate. But they're learning the catechism and they're learning theology, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, that's my kids learning from the teachers in the church, which God has gifted certain people in the church to be teachers.
Right.
And my kids are learning from them, and we're learning from teachers, and that's a great thing. But then we all converge for the worship service, and we're included there.
Right. And we include our children in the worship service as a whole.
Right. Reading scripture with them, showing them how to sing the songs, and helping them understand the flow and what we're doing and with the liturgy and everything else, and reading scriptures along with us in the bulletin and in, the Bible and stuff. And it's really cool. As far as little babies or young kids, 1, 2, 3 years old, now I think it's a great opportunity to discipline your kids, to just teach them to sit still and be quiet. Try to include them as early as possible. If your, kid is colicky and cries a lot, they need to be in the nursery. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't think so either. I think you'd be loving your family. I think that'd be like a Titus 2 issue where training the young women to love their children.
Yeah.
Sometimes loving your children means not making your sick child sit in the pew and get up and down for every song. And sometimes it's just going to mean staying at home. Or if they're just having a really rough day, maybe go to the nursery and have a heart-to-heart with them and teach them something special in the nursery. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And as far as some people might question, well, how can you believe in family integrated worship and the regulative principle, but also believe in Sunday school? Because nothing in the Bible talks about a Sunday school. And I think that there'd be people who would just think that's probably a little bit outside of Reformed theology, a little bit. I would disagree with them, because when Paul's giving instructions for spiritual gifts to be used inside of the church, one of them is the gift of teaching. It doesn't say the gift of pastoring, it says the gift of teaching, which means there will be multiple people in a church with that gift, right? Should everyone get up and teach like the pastor? We'd say no, that's a special position reserved for the pastor. But what about the other people in the church who are gifted with teaching? There are other ways they can use that gift. One of them would be Sunday school.
Exactly. Well, and we see the deacon, obviously with some sort of gift of teaching with the Ethiopian in Acts and helping him understand scripture. And so that was totally outside of church and all that kind of stuff. But an instance where someone who's not an elder outside of church exercising, his gift of teaching.
Right.
So now how that hermeneutic applies to paedo communion. And this ends up getting you into federal vision theology, which if kids are included in the covenant,
we would reject.
Which we reject, which most conservative Presbyterian denominations reject and have rejected over the last 10 years, and that's a rabbit trail all in of itself. But they would say, okay, well, if your kids are included, then they get communion. Now, the reason why I believe baptism is the initiatory sign of the new covenant, I think, is explicitly told in Colossians 2, verse 11 and 12. And Paul says there, he's talking about Christians, that we have been circumcised with circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of the flesh, by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism. So Paul right there equates baptism to circumcision. Those are interchangeable. Now, baptism is called the circumcision of Christ. So we look back to what circumcision was, and now we know what baptism is in the new covenant. So that's where they're equated. And so that's why we give it to children. Now again, okay, if your kids are in, then why don't they get communion? Well, I think explicitly in 1 Corinthians, Paul is correcting the Corinthians on their practice of communion, of coming to the Lord's table. In verse 28 of chapter 11, he specifically says, "Let a person examine himself then, and so eat of the bread and drink of the cup." So there's a requirement of all those before they eat and drink to examine themselves. A 6-month-old cannot do that. And the whole purpose was so you don't drink judgment on yourself. so that you don't eat and drink in an unworthy manner. And I think I've heard it explained as